Hello and welcome to Season 4 of our Parallel Paths, a future for my loved one with a disability and for me. I'm your host, Gerry, Dr. Geralyn Arango Deely, and this podcast is about just what the title says, the parallel paths of family members, certainly parents, sometimes siblings as parents age or pass on, and their loved ones with intellectual disabilities. I'm a parent myself, and I always have questions. Our Parallel Paths is about nurturing and supporting ourselves as we nurture and support our loved ones with intellectual disabilities. Our roles as family members are ever-changing and evolving alongside our loved ones. So there's more than one path, more than one future to talk about, and that's why we're here. I hope the stories and perspectives of my podcast guests and me give you hope, information, and ideas for your path. So welcome to, I had to break it up. I wanted to share more information and I wanted you to go, refresh yourself to come back for more. And so we are back with Jessica Fenton, who is a supports coordinator as well as she is the director of Miracle Works, a Pennsylvania supports coordination organization, and SCO, because we love jargon in this world. And so we talked last episode about the help that's out there in the form of supports coordination, and that somehow or other you may already have this support. So what we wanted to do was to kind of flesh out some of the pieces of what that means, as well as figure out how to optimize. And our last episode, we started out with kind of getting all the vernacular, all the vocab, getting the glossary going. So we talked about what supports coordination is, and if you did not listen to that episode, you might want to go back and give it a listen to get yourself up and running, because Jessica shared some good information there. And we talked about what is being coordinated, this term waiver. And I love the fact that waiver really means that we waive the option of putting our loved one into, say, a group home in order to give them options in the community. And an ISP, how it's different from an IEP, because those of us who've been through K-12++, we know that phrase IEP, and we are also being introduced before or during the school years to an ISP. And that's where supports coordination really kicks in. And so at this point, thanks again, Jessica, for hanging in, for being on the podcast part 2. And I think what I would like to do with the rest of our time together is, I think maybe let's start with your story and where you started with all of this. Because you said you were on one of the first people to be trained in HCSIS, and go back to that other episode if you want to know what that one stands for. But how did you get into this particular line of work, and where did you start, and how did you end up where you are with your own agency?
Okay, well, thank you for having me again, Gerry. It's an absolute honor to be here with you. So I started out, I guess my journey started out at Westchester University. I got my bachelor's in social work, and I had the good fortune of great teachers there who actually had the civil service come out and do the testing at Westchester University. So I was lucky enough to have it right at my fingertips, took the civil service exam, and a few months later I got called by the county to come in for an interview. I knew nothing about the disability system. I didn't even know it existed at that point. Got hired with the Delaware County Office of Intellectual Disability Supports Coordination Organization, but at the time it was called OMR, the Office of Mental Retardation. Mm-hmm. It has since changed, thank goodness, and it is the Delco SCO now.
Okay.
So that is where I started. So I started in September of 2000.
Okay.
So I was there during my time at Delaware County. I wanted to go back to school, so I went back to school, got my master's in education with a specialty in counseling. But I loved my job. You know, I had supervisory opportunities. I never took them because I loved being out with the clients.
Okay.
But while I was going for my master's, I really enjoyed the consultation aspect of it. So I started doing some consultation on the side with people that were trying to get into the disabilities system as a provider. So I just would help some female entrepreneurs, get into the system and help them learn what it was about. And as I was doing that, I thought, wow, why don't I do this myself? So that's kind of how that started. And I also then, I also had a child and, wanted to really, expand. So that's how starting my own agency came about after doing some consultation with some other service providers.
Okay. And
I retired from the county. I know it's good. I retired from the county in 2020, so I got my 20 years in. And
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so 20 years with Delaware County, and now I am with Miracle Works Supports Coordination.
Okay.
Very, very blessed.
You're the director of Miracle Works.
I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am. The
And
executive director.
you get to do a little pitch for your organization. What do you feel like, between the experience you have, what does your organization bring to the supports coordination organization concept?
Well, I think what we bring is we're very small. We're teeny tiny, small potatoes next to the big SCOs. So we bring a family-like atmosphere with Miracle Works. We are able to keep the caseload sizes very low. So your supports coordinator is going to be more available to you because we're able to keep lower case sizes. And with being such a small agency, you always have access to the director. So I know everybody, in the agency, and I am able to get on a phone call with a family, the same day that they have the need, or perhaps the next day. But I'm always available. And I think that's where smaller agencies really shine. Mm-hmm. I think that they're able to have that family atmosphere that unfortunately the big agencies can't do. Not saying there are some fantastic SEOs out there that are working their butts off and that are absolutely wonderful, wonderful options. But that's the difference that I see.
Okay. Well, that's a wonderful difference. I don't know that this would now have you getting people calling and making your organization try to be bigger because that sounds good. But I wonder too, when it comes to, someone who is in a larger agency or is in the county, what do you see as the challenges that those agencies have in supporting families? What are the bigger agencies' challenges?
I think the bigger agencies' challenges are actually finding supports coordinated and filling those empty caseloads. There's unfortunately supports coordination is a lot of work, and it's definitely a highly stressful position, and there is so much information to learn. I've been doing this for 24 years and I don't know everything at all. There's still so much that I don't know. So, when you're first hiring someone, it's very overwhelming. So there's a lot of turnover because of that. So I think that's where the bigger agencies struggle with. I think the state is really trying to address it. They're trying to address it with rate increases and different incentives. But that's definitely something that the big SEOs have to deal with on a daily basis. So sometimes you're not going to be able to get to your supports coordinator because they might not be there. So you want to go up to the supports coordination supervisor. You want to call the direct line and ask for who the supervisor is on so-and-so's caseload. So then you can get to a supervisor who can help you with a need while they're waiting to fill that position if you don't have a supports coordinator.
Okay, because it has never been my impression that people didn't want to do the job.
Never.
I mean, like I said, we've been through quite a few supports coordinators in our time in a couple different agencies, and I never thought, oh, this person's slacking off or they don't care. It always felt like, wow, I'm glad you're doing this job because I wouldn't want to, It just seemed, and that what you're saying is that it is a tremendous amount of information, and then you have a tremendous amount of people to support, and then the agencies don't have a tremendous amount of people doing the supporting.
Absolutely. So the supports coordinators that are there are going to have high caseloads, and they're probably trying to help out and cover, people that need to be seen and that need help. But it's never, I've never come across people that don't want to do it. It's more of people might get burnout or might get overwhelmed by the system and feel like they're not going to be successful because of all of the information that comes along with it.
Okay. Huh. All right. That's validating, because that's always what it seemed like. Wow, what a job, And so if a person is in that situation, yes, they have to kind of realize that these folks might have really large caseloads. I'm wondering, what would you advise to be able to really maximize the use of whatever, attention your supports coordinator can give, given that they have only so much attention and so many people?
That's more of a systemic issue.
Okay.
So I think that maybe contacting the state, letting them know your experiences. I think the state always likes to hear from families and see what's happening with the boots on the ground. And I think that that's important. But I also think that it's important that families know that they have choice. So if there's ever issues that your agency just, your supports coordination has done their best, but they just can't meet your needs. Mm-hmm. You just know that you always have choice. You have choice for providers. You have choice for supports coordination organizations. And there are a lot of great organizations out there. I'm not the only small SEO. There are other small SEOs that give exceptional service, as do a lot of the big ones as well. Mm-hmm. But you have choice. You can go to another SEO if your SEO isn't meeting your needs.
I think people don't realize that I know the first time I made that change, I felt like I was hurting somebody's feelings. I felt like I was hurting the county's feelings. I felt like, oh my goodness, you tried so hard, but I need something else. And, eventually I got over that. But at first I felt like, oh, you're going to think, because I've got some issues, I suppose. What do you do? If you say to yourself, I need to make a change, how do you even start that change?
So first of all, don't feel bad. Okay, you're navigating. A supports coordinator is responsible for helping coordinate all of the services that is going to enable your loved one to live as independently and as successfully as possible. So don't feel bad. It happens all the time, and somebody else is going to come along and they're going to fill that caseload. So don't you worry about leaving somebody. Yeah, there's always going to be a need there.
Don't have to be like that.
But if you do decide that you want to see what else is out there and there just might be a better fit for you, you want to contact that county administrative entity that we had talked about in the previous episode. So you want to call your county administrative entity, whether that's, we're in the southeast region of Pennsylvania. You get a hold of them and you want to talk to their intake coordinators usually, but you want to ask about who you talk to about switching SEOs. And they will get you in touch with a process. They'll get you a release of information form. They'll tell you what SEOs are available. They'll reach out to that SEO and say, hey, are you able to take this person? And then the transfer can happen. Some counties are quicker than others, but your best bet is just to keep on it. And like I said before, you have to be your own self-advocate. Mm-hmm. You have to keep advocating. These administrative entities are also really overwhelmed. There's so many people coming into the system. They've opened up our system for people with autism as well. So that's essentially... I can't speak to the numbers, but I would think that at least doubled the amount of consumers that come in. So you just don't have to have an ID. You can have a diagnosis of autism that you don't have the ID diagnosis. So there's been such an increase in the amount. So the administrative entities are also really overwhelmed. So you might get lost in that if you're trying to transfer. So you just keep up on it. Call them back, email them back so they don't forget about you to get that transfer going.
I guess even write it down, keep it on your calendar, your phone calendar or whatever, that you just kind of remind yourself. Because
and once a month, check it. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Is this done?
Yeah. Yep. And again, people like me have to get over the I just want everybody to like me kind of thing and say it's what I think about at those moments is like, I'm doing this for Nick.
That's right.
Put a little picture of him, someplace with or without a beard. And, just to say that's what this is for.
That is what it's for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't worry about other people's feelings. You just frame it, hey, I just think that this might be a better fit. If anybody would to question you, but no. You're doing it for your loved one.
Okay. Because that is, first of all, to know that you can. And then second of all, to know how you can do it. And again, you Googled intellectual disability services Pennsylvania and you got information. So if you're not sure, like, well, who am I supposed to call? Look it up. One of the other things that I noticed is that from time to time there are just service provider fairs where, do you do that kind of stuff?
Yes, I actually, because we're small, we don't go to the provider fairs.
Okay.
But we actually are in process. We just missed one, but I think there's another one in June that I think we might go to because we do have some limited openings. But yeah, go to the provider fairs. I don't know how many SEOs go there, but there's a ton of provider fairs, so you can meet different providers.
Yeah, because I feel like, well, there's, how do I know? And it's like, maybe if you see that in your email or online or wherever you see it, it's a way to just kind of go from table to table and talk to people.
Absolutely.
Get, a pen or some candy, my personal favorite, and really just talk to the folks at the SCOs, whoever came for it, and learn about their philosophy, learn about how they, how big they are, how small they are, how do they, and ask them all the questions,
Absolutely. And, if you can't get a date, because some supports coordinators, that might not trickle down to them necessarily, but call that local AE that I was just talking about, call the main number and just say, hi, I'm a parent. Can you tell me when your next provider fair is? And just get that information, and they should be able to give it to you right away. Or they'll say, hey, we just had one. Can you call back in a couple months and we'll have the exact date for you. So reach out, give a quick phone call to that AE and get that information.
Okay. Because I do feel like, one of the other ways that I learned about organizations was word of mouth.
Yes.
And
I find that is by far the best. People put their best foot forwards on the provider fairs, but I think word of mouth is by far the best because that's how we find good provider agencies for our guys. We hear, from a colleague how great this provider was and how they helped them in a situation. So, then we'll use them. Or I might use them for one particular consumer, and the SC, I'll tell the SCs, hey, why don't you try this person? They're wonderful. So I think that nothing beats word of mouth. And I've been around for 24 years, and by far that has been the best way to find quality providers.
So asking parents in your support group,
yes.
asking
what is your experience?
Yeah.
How who have you met out? Who have you seen that maybe isn't going to be a good fit, and who have you seen who would be a good fit?
Because even agencies that I have used in the past, other people love them, and it's like, you know what, I'm learning because I know what did you love about them, and we needed something different or whatever, and so there's no harm in that. And
absolutely not.
And
absolutely
so even
not.
if it's like, no, that's not what I want, at least you're finding out from someone who's actually actively using their services.
Yes, and there might be a situation where you have heard great things and you might like them. They just might not be a good fit, or there might be a little bit of staggering. They can't find really good staff at that correct moment. So your best bet for your loved one is to get an agency that can help you. So again, don't feel bad. You have the right to choice. You can go through, 3 different agencies until you find the right fit. It's all about what is best for your loved one.
Okay, so that's huge and completely memorable because as much as it can be also overwhelming, and we really need supports coordination to be reliable, to be accessible and findable, and to be responsive. And so, as we figure out what our loved one needs and what we need from the agency to navigate all these systems, it's okay to kind of shop, but it's also really imperative to advocate and make the call and be a little persistent in things. One of the good things about an agency that I no longer use is that when they said, oh, you have community living waiver, you're done. I went, oh, no, you're not. Oh, no, we're not done. We're not done. And I made my case for why we're not, because, of all the things that, I was widowed, my daughter was in the military, and it's just the 2 of us here. And they kept it going for me at the level where it needed to go. So one day I got a phone call that said, guess what? You've got the consolidated waiver. And it was one part me saying, no, we're not done. And one part them saying, you know what? To whoever, she's not done.
Yes.
This family isn't done. They
Yes.
need more.
And that's why self-advocacy is, I think, the most integral part. You have to use your voice.
Okay. And then when it comes to, okay, I got a waiver. Yay, got a waiver. Lovely that they've all gone up some. How can a supports coordinator help us to kind of optimize how we use this funding? I always think of it when I tell people that I've got a waiver and I can't explain it to the typical folk because they have no real whatever. I kind of say it's almost like you have a grant that you spend down, and it's not, but it's sort of like that's a way to say it to people who really don't need to know. They're just curious.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Use it like a grant, because people know what grants are.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't know what waivers are, but if you say, I have a grant and I get this much money
Yeah.
a year.
I don't get anything in my pocket.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact, as a common law employer, I don't get anything in my pocket. And if I clock my hours, I should have some money. But
It's a labor of love.
well, it totally is. And when I see progress and I see like, oh, we did it, or even when we didn't, it's like, you know what, we're moving forward, and forward sometimes is 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's a little bit of a waltz, but it is in motion, and we have the funding. So the question I think that comes to mind now is, how can a supports coordinator help you to sort of have conversations and optimize how you use the funding?
Well, so you want to talk to your supports coordinator about what your needs are. A supports coordinator should be asking that question. Hey, what's going on? What do you need, or what does Nick need to succeed? How is he doing with his job? Does he have enough job supports? And again, you just want to be vocal about what those needs are. Please don't sugarcoat it. Please don't hide things from your coordinator. Be honest about where the struggles are, so they can sit down and they can say, okay, well, it looks like he might need some in-home supports, or, he can't be left alone at night. So I think we need to get some companion in there. He's struggling at work, so we need to increase the employment supports by 2 hours a week. That's really going to help him. So you need to talk to your coordinator. You need to make sure that they know what all the issues are, so they can help you add whatever services they need into that plan. And if you don't have the waiver that you need, they can get you on that emergency list to wait for the next waiver to come.
Okay. And there's these opportunities that are kind of built into the system, like, okay, we have an annual meeting.
Exactly.
Our meeting is coming up next Friday, and I feel like, I have to prepare, and I have to read that document that's made in like a 3-point font. It's like, oh, this hurts my head. But to sort of review it and think about it. But then I know we at this level of waiver get monitoring quite frequently. Does everybody get monitored?
So, they should. Again, that can be a shortcoming with some supports coordination organizations that struggle, but for regulation purposes, you absolutely should be getting monitoring. So the community living waiver and the consolidated waiver have the same monitoring frequency, and that's every other month. So every 2 months, you should be talking. Your supports coordinator should be completing monitorings. The PFDS waiver, which is that first waiver, that's every 3 months. So at minimum, a coordinator should be conducting monitorings every 3 months, and that's going to help them get the full picture of what is working and what the challenges are and what they can do, to help maximize supports with you.
Okay, because that's huge too. It's like we need the opportunities to have conversations, and some of them are built in.
Yes.
And so yay. Okay.
Yes. If you're not getting regular monitorings, if you have a waiver, you need to let that supports coordination supervisor know, so they're aware, because you really want to make sure that they're doing the job that they're supposed to do. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you think families need to know that we need to go a little deeper in, or that I forgot to ask? I know we talked about self-direction a little bit. I mean, that's a whole nother... So I know that you're the common law employer, Gerry, and that's not a paid role. Self-direction is a great system in Pennsylvania, which is a model for people that want to self-direct their services. And what that means is somebody like Gerry hires their own staff, and they manage that staff. So they're self-directing instead of having a provider agency direct those services, you are essentially directing those services. So it saves the state some money, and usually you can pay your staff a little bit a lot better wages.
A lot better wages.
A lot better wages.
Hopefully that's enticing.
Yes, yeah. And that helps with retention.
Sure.
And it usually gives you, the quality services that you're looking for. So I suggest that family members look into that for self-directing for people that might have staff that are able to work with your loved one. And
you can hire some family members as well.
Absolutely.
I, as the common law employer, will not get paid, but I can hire members. We actually just hired Nick's sister.
Fantastic.
Because why not? And we've hired, again, word of mouth kinds of stuff, ads, whatever. But yeah, you have a lot of leeway in who you might be able to hire.
You do. The one thing that families need to know is you can't be the common law employer and staff. So they have to be separate roles. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can hire family members. You can hire neighbors. You can, essentially, you hire who you think is going to work best. Mm-hmm. Now, that does come with its own challenges.
Yes.
You have to make sure the staff is keeping their service notes. You have to make sure they're working on their goals.
Everybody just got a text, like everybody in that service notes thing.
Yes.
Because I have to be accountable, to the county with the progress notes.
That CLE role is a labor of love. You have to do quarterly progress notes to make sure that people are at least maintaining, that you guys are reviewing. So it does come with strings. It's not, an easy thing, but it is, when it works beautifully.
Yeah, because I think I did a podcast episode back when I called it Jerry's Angels, because it was like, for me, a lot of times it's texts and emails and phone calls because I'm not on site. And that was sort of challenging too. And how do you manage your staff in all the different ways? Mm-hmm. And it was, even as I was researching and kind of talking from my own experience, it was still instructive to me of like, what can I do differently? And so, yeah, managing staff, hiring and managing staff is its own challenge, but it's I think something I heard about that I hope it really happens was they were talking about, making this a sustainable model, because I'm the common law employer, but part of this is, passing that on. Like it is still my job. Is there a way to kind of turn that job into something a little more where someone else manages pieces of it for me too? But
absolutely. So one of the services you can do is get a supports broker, which you have, and he's a wonderful, excellent support broker. So I definitely think that that's an amazing tool for CLEs to have.
Yeah.
A support broker can help you with the management of your staff and help you hire someone, help you design those progress notes that are best for your staff and for your loved one. So that is a great tool. But if there's reasons, health reasons, any kind of reasons, an unfortunate death, someone else can be the CLE. So you can move it from one person to another. Okay. And sometimes needs change. There might be a loved one that is the CLE that needs to become the staff person.
Yeah.
And so they could give up their role as a CLE and become the staff person, as long as there's another CLE that is willing to step in. Okay. And do that. And it's a wonderful, wonderful model. Mm-hmm. And most of our families that utilize it, it works beautifully. But it definitely is, you have to be prepared that you are going to have certain responsibilities when you're the common law employer.
So I'm glad to know that a supports coordinator can be there as one of the people, giving input, giving advice, pushing the paperwork that makes my head explode through the system to get what Nick needs and ultimately what our family needs. So I'm so glad you came to part 2 of the podcast.
Yes. And
that's a whole nother half an hour of talking.
So real fast, I just want to let all your listeners know that if you do decide to self-direct and go with that self-direction model, you can also have a combination. You can have traditional providers and self-direct. So you can self-direct some services and still have traditional providers come in and help you where you're not able to find your own private staff for the hours that need. So you can definitely mesh the two models together.
Yeah, that's what we do. And I always think of it, I've had people kind of parse it out like, well, that's not self-direction. It's like, it's all self-direction to me.
That's right.
Because it's all what we said we want. Like,
That's
he's
right.
got a job. He's got job coaches through an agency. He's got overnight staff right now. 4 parts home health agency, 1 part staff I've hired. And then there's all the other people who kind of bounce through the week. And so to me, that's what we want. And we call that self-direction,
Yes,
even if
ma'am.
it's not
Absolutely.
technically so. So Jessica, thank you so much for being on this podcast. This was, I think, one of our most important episodes, or a pair of episodes, because I feel like I have learned more about taking advantage of the expertise of a supports coordinator and a supports coordination organization. And I think that what we've been talking about is not true only to your organization, but to others as well. And I hope that wherever you are, listeners, it has helped to clarify some of the complications that happen as our loved ones enter the adult world and all those worlds of things that we qualify for, and how an SCO and a supports coordinator can be of help. So, listeners, thank you so much for spending time with us today on this episode with Jessica Fenton, Director of Miracle Works, on our Parallel Paths, a future for our loved ones with a disability, and for me. And I hope that you'll like and follow our podcast, that you'll share it with family and friends, and I really hope you'll return to listen and learn from more stories of people like you and me and a loved one with a disability on our Parallel Paths. You are not alone. I'll see you next time.